Hey, this is Patrick, and today I'm going to show how to use the instrument landing system in YS Flight. First, I'm going to land manually using the ILS. Got a little picture here of a stock ILS ground object. Okay, first thing, pull up the ILS for the runway where you plan to land, and you can see that I'm already getting close to lining up with that runway. You can tell by looking at the compass, which I have already set for the runway heading. The runway is runway 32, so I've set the heading on the compass for 320 degrees. You'll notice that there are two arrows pointing towards each other in the center on either side of the compass. Those arrows indicate whether you are above or below the vertical line for the runway. I'm not sure exactly what that's called. I believe it's called the glide slope, and that tells you whether you're too high or too low. Then there is the arrow pointing to 320 degrees. You'll notice that part of the arrow, the line on the arrow, has moved all the way to the right. Now you can see at the bottom of the dashboard now the runway is coming into view, and the closer we get to being in line with that runway, the more that line is going to start lining back up with the rest of the line on the arrow in the compass. So I know I'm getting close, so I'm already going to start turning for the final approach into that runway. By the way, this is just an airplane I've been working on, and I always test out my airplanes at my Groom Lake test facility mount, which is part of Arizona 2014. And yes, it is in Nevada instead of Arizona, but anyway. Okay, so you can see the line is starting to move towards the center of the compass now, and I'm still a little bit too far to the left. You'll also notice that I've gone off glide slope. I have not become an expert at keeping the vertical part in line, but I'm getting pretty good at being able to line it up horizontally so that I'm actually landing in the center of the runway, and that's always a good thing. My problem is I'm a little bit too high at this point. So just like if you're too far to the left, the line is on the right side. If you're too high, the arrows go towards the bottom of the compass. If you're too low, they would most likely go to the top. You can see I passed the ILS box, and this plane for some reason has a data file that makes it kind of not land smoothly. You can see, yeah, I'm blaming the data file. Okay, so you can see I was pretty close to the center line. I've got the spoilers on high, and the reverse thrust was activated, but now I'm slowed down, so I'm coming to a stop. So next up is using the ILS and the YSF Auto Pilot. Okay, so I'm starting off, I'm in autopilot flying straight and level. You probably know that the autopilot in YS Flight is pretty basic, pretty simple. It doesn't really do much except for straight and level or go in circles and level, but it can also land pretty well. And it's really pretty good at landing, but when you transfer from manual flying into landing mode, it can be kind of rough, and you'll see that in a minute. Okay, so you can see I went a little bit too far to the side of the runway before I activated landing mode, and you can see the plane kind of turns on the brakes, trying to slow down. Not the brakes, but the spoiler. The brakes are actually off. The autopilot has put the gear down. It's put the flaps all the way down. It's slowing down to about 155 and 160 knots. The speed for landing varies depending on what kind of plane you're flying. You saw that I'm flying a jet, a business class jet. So about 150 to 160 knots for the approach speed is pretty normal. And you can see that autopilot is a lot better at me at lining up with the runway, both horizontally and vertically. You see that the glide slope indicator, or whatever that thing is called, somebody correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Oh, I just said to correct me in the comments. Like a real YouTube video maker. But anyway, you can see that it and the other needle are lined up, and it's going to pretty much hold that all the way to the ground. You can see I'm zooming in, see the runway. There it is. And from this point on, it's pretty boring just sitting back and waiting for the computer to land. Now, what I often do is I watch how far I am away from the runway, and about a mile before I get to the runway, because I've started a long way back, and the computer has got me lined up several miles back from the runway. Sometimes what I'll do is when I get to about a mile from the runway, I just switch back to manual and do the landing myself. But for this video, I'm going to let the computer do everything all the way to the ground. Once I've touched down, and you'll see why I do it, because once you touch down with the autopilot, unless you're on a stock map that's set up for AI controlled movement on the ground, funny things can happen once the plane touches down. And sometimes the plane comes almost to a stop and then all of a sudden decides to turn west. Okay, so I got bored of just sitting there waiting and watching, because I don't have anything I can do other than wait and watch. So I went to the ILS box view using the F6 button, and here I come. You can see the flaps are down. You can see the plane is pretty much right in the center, and it's touched down. Okay, it's put on the spoilers, put on the brakes, reverse thrust is at maximum, and for some reason the computer decided it was going to raise the nose just as far as it could go. So I took control, turned off the autopilot. I should have turned it off as soon as I touched the ground, and now I'm in control. If I hadn't have took control when I did, the autopilot probably would have given me a tail strike. Okay, so that's all. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.